This is the only video you'll need to watch if you want to start consistently booking meetings and closing clients with cold email in 2026. Over the last few years, my team and I have helped over 70 plus B2B companies set up a outbound cold email system. We send over 10 million cold emails, generate tens of thousands of leads, and generating decamillions in pipeline value for dozens of B2B industries across SaaS, services, products. We've done it all. In this video, I'm going to break down everything you need to know, the entire system, step by step. This isn't just 5 tips on how to make your cold emails better. This is the full playbook. Everything from research and development to infrastructure to campaign creation, messaging frameworks, deliverability, everything that you need to know from building your system to closing deals with cold email. Everything we do at Pipeline Tech for our clients laid out for you to copy. I'm going to be honest, this is going to be a very long video, so if you don't have the focus to watch this, I recommend just clicking off this and maybe go watch some other quick tutorial. But if you're really looking to just download the system for yourself and have a true understanding on how to make cold email actually work for your business, then you're going to want to stick around and take notes. Because by the end of this video, you'll have everything that you need to know to consistently start booking meetings with cold email and not have to continuously go through this trial and error that you might be struggling with for the moment. So let's get into it. All right, so here's how you actually book meetings with cold email in 2026. So in this document, I'm going to be covering pretty much this entire flow chart you see here. Everything from market research, ICP definition. I know it's kind of hard to see here, but full TAM coverage. Let me see if we can zoom in. Full TAM coverage, all the data sources that we use, data enrichment, the outbound actioning with email, calling, LinkedIn, how we gather all the replies and create a system that can score the leads that we receive. And so we can also maximize for book rate from the positive response that we generate, right? Because the end of the journey isn't just a positive response. It's also actually booking them into a meeting and then taking the meeting and then, of course, running your sales process and closing the client from there. So I'm going to be covering absolutely everything. So let's just dive into it. So table of contents, what I'm going to cover, as I just mentioned, first I'll cover who I am, research and development, how it's the foundation of the entire outbound strategy. ICP definition, TAM mapping, strategy development kind of all falls under that research and development portion. Offer creation, infrastructure, list building, campaign execution, a lot of stuff on email messaging. I know you guys are very eager to probably see okay, what are the cold emails that I use and all that stuff. I'm going to be covering all there and the principles that you can actually use to not just copy from other people, but learn how to write really good messaging on your own. Then from there, campaign management, optimization, some playbooks, and then sales process. So actually, what to do when you generate leads and then how to convert them into closed deals. So if you don't know me, my name is Christian Placencia and I'm the founder at Pipeline Tech. We are a outbound go-to-market agency. So we're in the whole go-to-market field, but we specifically focus on just outbound. We do cold email, cold calling, LinkedIn outbound. So anything where searching for a particular persona or group of companies, we reach out to them and we generate opportunities from there. Our team at Pipeline Tech has collectively generated over 20,000 sales opportunities, adding up to roughly 70 million in pipeline generated for 100 plus B2B companies. We've worked from startups to SaaS to enterprise companies to mid-market. We've worked with everyone. If you're a B2B company, these are principles that will apply to you and have been proven successful across most industries. And throughout my time of building my companies, I have amassed a following of over 40,000 across LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, teaching B2B professionals how to do everything I'm about to show you in this video. And here are just a few campaigns. This is for a manufacturing company, generated 1,000 leads in 70 days, sent roughly 200,000 emails, 741 leads from 200,000 emails. This was for a building materials company. Got this one. I think this was for e-commerce, 171 leads in a pretty saturated industry. I think this was for a asset management offer. More here. I'll share this document below and you guys can check out the social proof. You can see my following there. And if you go to my website, pipeline.tech, you can check out our client interviews. And I also have in-depth case studies on each of these campaigns I've shown. So go to my website if you want to see in-depth breakdowns of these campaigns. So starting off, we're going to start with research and development, and this is the absolute foundation. And this is probably one of the most overlooked steps within the whole outbound campaign creation process. Most companies think they know everything that there is to know about their market and their general positioning within the market. But to their surprise, there's a lot more that they can uncover that they're missing out on and can be used as alpha for your campaigns, which can give you that advantage to where, you're sending a really strong message, or you're targeting a really, niche persona that just resonates super well with your offering. And the only way you'll uncover that is through research and development. So before you buy any tools, you send a single email, buy any domains, you need to do this first. This is the groundwork of everything: lists, messaging, offer positioning, targeting. You need to know your market. And a lot of people overlook this. A lot of go-to-market teams overlook this. And pretty much what you're trying to do is just, okay, first, understand who are we actually trying to reach? Why would they care? What do they actually want that's relevant to what we're selling? And then where do we find them? If you can't answer these clearly, then you have a fundamentally broken strategy and you need to reassess what you're doing. Most outbound campaigns are fired via guesswork, which guesswork is just going to end up in dollars burned and time wasted and just frustration in general. So first thing we want to do is gather company context. You may have already done this. If you have, that's great. If not, this is foundational. As a B2B company, you should already have this, but if you don't, now it's time to do it. This is gonna be our knowledge base, right? Our source of truth for building outbound campaigns. And it all starts off with understanding your company. You're gonna ask yourself, okay, so what do you sell? You should know that. Who do you sell it to? What's the average deal size? What's your sales process look like today? What's working? What isn't? And what does your current client base look like? And you wanna get very specific. So obviously, you know what you sell. You know who you sell it to. But do you know specifically who do you truly want to sell to? Who is your ideal customer profile? Like, looking at your sales recordings and your closed won deals, what's the common persona or company that is consistently closing the most out of all the deals that are coming to you, right? Find that out and then maybe tier it out. Tier out like, all right, let's say, SaaS companies are closing the best out of everyone versus like e-commerce. Maybe you thought e-commerce was your number one market, but when you actually analyze your closed one, look at your sales call recordings, maybe SaaS it was the answer. And it's like, okay, maybe we double down on SaaS and we go after these companies over outbound, right? We prioritize them. What does your sales process look like today? Is it optimized for outbound? Is it optimized for cold traffic? It's a much different game selling to cold traffic than it is selling to warm traffic, via ads or inbound content. What's working, what isn't? This is, very broad question, but what services, if you sell multiple services, what are you actually selling the most? What has the highest gross profit margin, right? What isn't selling well? What's actually eating at your margins? Understand these things, and you can use that, for creating your campaigns, right? And, optimizing your campaigns for profitability. Because at the end of the day, we want these to be profitable. We don't want to be selling a service that maybe gets a lot of leads, but it's not something that's actually profitable for your business. It seems like common sense, but a lot of people overlook these things and actually don't know their numbers. So very important to understand. And then what does your current client base look like? Get a gauge of, okay, who are most of your customers, right? Look at that and uncover that and create a rough draft ICP, ideal customer profile, if you don't know what that means, around your current client base. If you see that 70% of your client base is under, one market, let's say, marketing SaaS companies, then that's your ICP, right? So understand that. So yeah, if you're doing this as a agency or consultant, you can do this through onboarding form or deep dive call. And from this, we'll also have GPT, like you use GPT-03 or whatever deep research tool like Perplexity, Claude. You can pretty much use anything these days. You can have it run a research prompt, and in the link below, I have a full playbook that has all these prompts. It is something that you do have to pay for. So if you want access to that, you can go down below and purchase that. It's like $20. It's worth the investment, but it covers everything that I covered in this video, plus more, and it has all the prompts. So if you want access to those prompts, you can go there and get it. I know it's a shameless plug, but it's very valuable. We'd like to gather this information manually, but then also have AI generate its own summary from it. And really what you could do is, you can create your own prompt if you want to. Just type in your company website and then tell it to just like, okay, uncover who I sell to, what do you sell to, blah, blah, and get information back. Moving forward, product service evaluation. So this is actually very important, and a lot of people do not understand what I'm about to tell them. And this is very important. So not all businesses are best fit for cold email specifically. Some offers are a lot more difficult to sell, and really not all offers are created equal when it comes to outbound. This is very important to understand, And this is something I make very clear with anyone that comes to work with us, with my agency, that if I look at their offer, and from my extensive experience working with many offers in different markets, I'm going to be honest with them and be like, hey, this is going to be something that might be more difficult than you expect to generate leads from cold email from, but it's possible, but you have to set your expectations before doing so. A lot of people see, crazy screenshots of campaign results, like even the ones I just showed you, and expect cold email to just be like something that's easy, something that's just like, oh, plug and play, let it run, and you're just going to generate leads. But it's definitely not like that at all. It's one of the hardest marketing channels you can master. That's why we have a full business around it. But understanding where your offer sits in your market is very important. So I'm going to dive into this. So there's going to be three main questions you need to ask yourself. Is your market hypersaturated? So essentially what that could look like, is this a market that is receiving a lot of cold emails per day? Example of this is, let's say, e-commerce for email marketing. This is something that's been saturated since like 2023, 2026. I mean, I can't even tell you how many email marketing agencies are going after these e-commerce brands, and it's something that is very saturated, right? A lot of people are doing this. Another one is actually cold email, selling cold email as a service over cold email. That's very saturated. Thousands of agencies are receiving, dozens of emails per day saying like, hey, work with my cold email agency and I'll book you 10 meetings per month, or you don't pay. Like, it's these same offers that everyone's seeing. So you need to understand, like, all right, am I in a market where like this is really competitive, or am I in something that's, not many people are doing this, or it's a market that's kind of more of a blue ocean? Example of this is, we had a client. They are a manufacturing company targeting local businesses that use disposables such as cups or plates, and essentially all they sell is customizable disposables. So things like paper cups with the company's logo on it. And with this, I mean, this is not something that a lot of people are selling over cold email. It's something that's very traditional. It's a pretty boring service, but the offer the client has is good. They offer better pricing, faster shipping, faster turnaround times than their competition. And we also have an interesting lead magnet that we're using for these as well. So something like that, cold email works super well. Or something like e-commerce to email marketing to e-commerce. It's a little more difficult, but it's still possible. And then, for example, something like cybersecurity, super difficult service to sell. If you do cybersecurity, I don't even really recommend doing cold email, to be honest, because it's so difficult. And also the market you're selling to, any people in IT, is a very difficult market to sell to, or who is very resistant to sales. So you got to kind of just have that market knowledge and know, like, all right, how well does my market, respond to outreach? How much outreach are they receiving? How commoditized is my offering? Things like this, right? Next thing to understand is a demand capture or demand generation. So like, this is the type of offer you have. So if you have a demand capture offer, examples of this: cybersecurity, insurance, recruiting. So these are really things that the prospect already has to have the need for, to really be interested. You can't convince someone of needing cybersecurity unless if you find like a super unique signal where, you found a attack that's about to hit their company and your solution saves them, or whatever. Things like this, or like insurance. Like, if it really, it's services that, or products that are only needed or wanted when the prospect has a need for them. Other examples are like accounting. Like, no, you can't really sell someone on a new accountant, right? Unless if the prospect, maybe got burned by their accountant, or they're already looking for a new one. Essentially, the prospect has to have a need for it for them to really want it. And these are more difficult to sell. Demand generation offers are offers that pretty much anyone can, it's something that you can sell to anyone, because the end result is something that companies always want more of. So anything that's like generating more, like, that correlates to directly generating more revenue, or more lead flow, or saving more time, or just, unlocking a new channel, anything that has a new opportunity or is directly resulting in a favor, like an outcome that they want, that doesn't require a ton of uprooting of what they're currently doing. Like, for example, an accountant, like, uprooting their current accountant for a new one, or uprooting their CRM for a new one. So things like influencer marketing, most brands always want more influencers. So if you can do it's a pretty easy service to sell. And if you have proof of, generating hundreds of millions of views for brands, then, it's something that's very attractive, right? TikTok Shop, like unlocking a new channel for the brands. You need SaaS products that could be a plethora of different things, but something that is, interesting, can always, is good at generating interest, right? And then how differentiated is your solution? So if 500 other companies are offering the same thing as you do with the same positioning, you have to repackage your offer for cold traffic. So going back to the example of email marketing e-commerce brands, right? Since everyone's saying the same thing of like, hey, we can increase your email revenue by 50% in like 30 days or whatever, you need to have a different positioning, and your front end offer needs to be different, which I'm going to dive more into in later in this video. But if your offer is just the exact same offer as everyone else is doing, then you have no differentiation, and why would anyone want to work with you, right? Like what makes you stand out? So you have to identify what can make you stand out versus the rest of the market. On the other hand, if there's only one of 20 companies, or you're the only company in the world that does what you do, you don't really have to do much convincing, right? You can have a pretty simple email and just be like, hey, we do this for this type of person or this type of company. Are you interested? You can hop on a call, etc. Something that's pretty simple to sell. So understand how to differentiate your solution and be honest with yourself. You really want to be honest, or else you're going to struggle. Now, this is kind of just dives into like what I've been talking about. Evaluating your market. So this goes back to saturation. And I'll dive more into this when we go into messaging. But essentially, if you have a saturated market, really the rules of your messaging that I'm going to outline later in this video are going to be much tighter. Like you're going to need shorter email. Your offer needs to be really compelling. Differentiation needs to be sharper. Like you're fighting uphill battle versus your competition. Whereas for unsaturated markets, you don't really have to. You can kind of break the rules a bit more. So I'm going to dive into that more later. So I won't really cover that anymore. Now going into ICP definition, TAM mapping, and strategy development. So this is going to be where we map out your market, outline your ICP, and start actually building the campaign strategy. So this is where we'll get very specific on who we're going to go after, right? So your ICP is not just e-commerce brands or SaaS companies. That's a market, not an ideal customer profile, right? ICP is a detailed definition of the exact type of company and person within that company who is most likely to buy from you and become a great customer. So here I'm going to outline a few of the most important details when it comes to outlining your ICP. First being team structure. So what team structure do they have? A certain number of salespeople, marketing people, HR. What is the ideal team structure that makes the most likely to be a good client and showing from buying signals, right? So let's say, I'll give you an example from my company. For my company, for a company to really be qualified to work with us, they need to have a sales team, right? Because we generate lead flow and we need sales personnel to be able to manage that lead flow. And sort of the sweet spot we've seen is between like 3 to 10 salespeople. Could be more as well, but 3 to 10 salespeople is like really ideal for us. If you don't have any salespeople, that's not ideal at all. So understanding that, like what kind of roles you're looking for within a company and the general team structure of it, because you might need multiple departments for your service or product to work the best, is going to be important to understand. Buying signals. So these are like active running signals that you can analyze from a company, and to get a gauge of like what situation they are in when they're looking to buy. So are they hiring? That's probably the most basic one. So like if they're hiring for an adjacent role to your service. So let's say, for example, for myself, if they're hiring for a bunch of SDRs, they're probably looking to ramp up their, call volume, right? So I can reach out and be like, hey, you're looking for a bunch of SDRs. We have a system that can 100x the output of an SDR, and we can just feed warm leads to your sales team. If they're losing employees, this could be something, maybe like an AI offer can be important here. If you're selling AI, looks like maybe the company is, maybe they're not losing employees, but they're firing, and they're looking to integrate more AI and have it take over roles. Or if they just raise funding. So that's a signal that they're looking to probably hire staff and go after agencies. So that's a good signal as well. So really just finding what's happening within the company that creates a need. You can also look for like news reporting. That's a really powerful one, and other signals that are custom to them. Decision maker profile. So who do you actually speak to on calls? This is super, super important, and a lot of people overlook this. For myself, again, I I speak to mostly like CROs, CEOs, and then people who lead the sales department at B2B companies. So these are the main people I speak to, and understanding that is going to help with my targeting. Targeting anyone outside of that doesn't really make sense. What's the title, department, etc. And then, oh yeah, reporting structure. So understanding like, okay, who do they report to? You know, like if you're getting calls with manager level people who like, or let's say you're targeting enterprise and you need to get your foot in the door with manager level people, understand, okay, who's this, who are the managers that you're reaching out to, that who are they reporting to, like who are the directors, who are the senior people at these companies, and kind of understand that within your sales process is going to be important. What tech do they have in place? So understanding, their technographic data. I think it's Shopify, HubSpot. For certain services, these are necessary, so that'll obviously be important. What are common pain points? So where can things you consistently hear for your sales calls? They're struggling with marketing ROI, if they can't find qualified hires, if they're overspending on a specific channel. And these are pain points that become the foundation of your messaging angles and can be potentially scrapable, right? And then past client case studies. So this is one of the best ones to do, is just look at your case studies. Who are you getting the best results for? And then develop lookalike profiles around them. Right. I'll dive into the tools that you can use for creating these lookalike lists later. But what are the industries? What do these companies have in common? Which can go back to these other points. What industries, size, tech stack, situation, etc. And this all becomes data that you can use for scoring criteria for your list building. You can do the scoring within Clay or NAN or Claude Code, whatever you use for doing this, and craft prompts around these. And go ahead about that. Right. Next to me, mapping the TAM. So once the ICP is defined, we can go ahead and kind of get a gauge of like, all right, what's our full TAM that we can really unlock within our ICP? So here is where we're going to uncover every viable industry segment, and then also estimating the total number of qualified companies and contacts available. You can use this. You can do this with tools like an Apollo or AI Arc, or a really good one is Disco-like. Disco-like is probably the strongest one. It's a little more expensive, but if you have the budget for it, really great. Yeah, Ocean, AR, Disco-like, really great tools. But getting a gauge of the size of your TAM too is really important as well, because it'll fundamentally shift the strategy and how you'll approach outbound. So let's say you have a large TAM. I mean, 100,000 contacts isn't massive, but let's say you have over 100,000 contacts. You can be a little more aggressive and take a more broad approach. I mean, you can take a more sniper approach while also taking a broad approach. But let's say you have a small TAM. If you take a broad approach, you're going to be running through your TAM super quickly. So you need to be a bit more surgical. Every email matters. Segmentation is critical. Yeah, really, you can't afford to just burn through your market like crazy. But if you have a TAM of, let's say, 1 million contacts, you can really go pretty crazy with testing, because it's going to take a while to run through that TAM. So if you're starting out and you maybe don't have enough budget for the more fancy tools, what you could do is just go to Apollo and sign up for the free account. Plug in your ICP filters, so basic ones like industry keywords, minimum employee count, location. And from there, you'll be able to get a general gauge of how many companies are available. And then what you can do from there is go to your people's tab, put in the decision maker filters. And then from there, you can get a decent gauge of how many available contacts are available within the TAM. Something to note with Apollo is that, let's say you have 100,000 people in a list in Apollo. When you actually export that list and verify the list, you're probably going to have like 60% of that data, unless if you use Clay and run a waterfall enrichment, then you can get a lot more data. But if you're just starting out, then you'll probably only get like 60% of the data you see on Apollo. But that'll be a good gauge to get for your TAM. Beyond that, as I said, you use Ocean, Disco-like to build lookalike lists, and you're going to get more data because, for example, a tool like Disco-like, they, instead of just using LinkedIn data, which Apollo uses, they use LinkedIn data and Google data, which gets them a lot more coverage. And the tool is very accurate too. So it's ideal to use Disco-like, but if you can't afford it, no worries. You can just use Apollo, get a decent gauge. Now, and of course, you could use Claude Code to, I recommend Claude Code for this, to prompt it for finding these segments and all that, and scoring based on your ICP. Again, I have full prompts in the ebook I have in the link in the description. You can get it there, $20. Another shameless plug. But yeah. So strategy development. Now that we have our market landscape outlined, your ICP, the full scope of the TAM, now we can synthesize this all into actual strategy and decide, what do we want to prioritize with outbound campaigns? What do we want to test and really get pretty surgical with it, right? So we need to ask ourselves a few questions. Which segments do we attack first and why? From all the data you collected from ICP, TAM, market landscape, you have a pretty good gauge of what you want to prioritize from there. So whatever your thesis is from the data on what might be the best fit segment to begin with, I start with that. You don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want. You can start with your worst segments and then scale from there. But if you're looking for lead flow as fast as possible, I'd recommend starting with your hypothesis for what the best segment might look like. And then you can dive into other segments beyond that point as well. So you can start with your best segments and then dive into the other segments after that as well. Next, we're going to ask ourselves, what's the primary offer positioning for each segment? So depending on the industry or the persona you're going after, their needs are going to be different, right? So we have to adjust our offer messaging according to the industry and persona we're going after. If you're selling a product to a marketing director at a SaaS company, what you're selling is going to be probably fundamentally a little bit different, and the messaging might be different versus selling something to head of operations at a manufacturing company, right? So it's going to be different. You're going to have to change the positioning a bit. What messaging angles have the highest likelihood of resonating? So I'll dive into this in the next ones with sequences. So a lot of this I'm going to dive into next, but at least asking yourself these first two will be important. And from these questions, we'll start developing our campaign thesis. But first, I'm going to dive into the messaging before you want to actually do that. All right, now we're going to dive into offer creation. So this is probably the highest leverage variable of your outbound campaigns, other than deliverability. Because if your email doesn't land in the inbox, nothing matters. But this is incredibly important, and I really want you to study what I'm about to tell you. So from the data you've gathered from R&D, you can really start to craft your offer pretty meticulously from this. And I think most people can agree that the offer is the single most important variable of your outbound campaigns that you can directly control. Sometimes you can't control deliverability. There might be some new algorithm update that you didn't foresee. Things like that happen. And I think most people would agree with this, right? So what we want to do is we want to craft something that, in terms of an offer, we're going to create a solution that's minimal risk, takes little effort or commitment, has major upside, is something that they actually want or need, is urgent and important to their function that they serve at their company, is quick to value. If we can craft an offer that encompasses all these traits, they will very likely be interested. Simply put, if you offer something that your ICP actually wants, not what you want to sell them, they are going to be a lot more interested. And a lot of people or a lot of companies I see just in their marketing in general, they want to sell what they want to sell to their customers. So, obviously that's what they want to do, right? That's what you want to do as a company. But they build their offering starting from the lens of, I have this product I want to sell to you, instead of thinking, all right, I have a persona that has a problem. How do I craft a solution to their problem and give that to them? That's a much different frame of mind. And I want you to take that frame of mind when it comes to crafting your offer. So I'm going to give you a few examples of these are front end offers, or like things that you offer in your cold email that aren't they're not your full offer, but it's like something that you want to lead with, right? Like your CTA in a way. So examples of, cool ideas. So again, creating an offer from what the customer tells you they want, not from what you think is just a cool idea. And examples of, cool ideas that nobody wants is a free 20-step deep account audit. I see so many people offering these audits. No one wants an audit from a complete stranger. Like in most cases, unless you're freaking Alex Ramosi, of course, anyone would take an audit from him. But for most companies who are just, you're not that well known, like who are you to audit whatever they're doing, right? Who are you to audit their infrastructure, their marketing, or their finances, right? No, they're not. They don't. No one wants that. A multi-service, we can do it all package. So it's like, we can replace your entire marketing team. We can run your ads, email, LinkedIn, like content. We can do everything for you. People don't want this, and they don't want you to do everything, right? They just want you to be really good at one thing first, and then you can sell everything. You can upsell them into different services or different products. They just want you to be really good at one thing. They don't want you to do everything. It's also scary for them, right? Like take over the entire marketing team or whatever they're doing, right? You don't want that. Let us replace your broken XYZ system and team. This one's kind of funny because you're reaching out to a company and you're telling them, hey, what you're doing sucks. We're going to do it better for you, which might be completely true. In most cases is true. But, if you're reaching out a senior role at any company, like number one, they're going to kind of be like, okay, who are you? Tell me that. And number two, they don't want you to just come in and rip their systems out and put your new system in. Like, for example, if you're running some sort of like niche CRM, most people don't want to be like, you'd be like, hey, like HubSpot sucks, use our CRM solution instead. Think about the amount of effort and trust they have to give a complete stranger all this information, and then go in and completely change what they've been doing all this time, right? These are offers that might be attractive to your CFO because maybe you charge a lot for them. There's great margins, but in practice, they're terrible for cold traffic. So you don't want to lead with these. Some great cold offers that we ran and have good success with, and are just general examples as well. So you're servicing HVAC in whatever area. I have 5 contacts that have been actively searching for your services, wanting you to send their contact info over. I mean, it's no brainer, right? This is, for example, let's say you're running a database that or you run like a lead service where you send leads to HVAC companies for people who have shown intent in a service in their area, right? This is a phenomenal lead magnet, and it's something that, like, why would they say no to this, right? There's nothing for them to lose. It's valuable. They can actively make money from it by just saying yes. I mean, it's super valuable, right? You're leading with what they want, which is more leads. We identified 3 brands that are copying companies' funnel word for word. We can have them taken down in 72 hours. Interested? I mean, kind of no brainer, right? It's like, oh, you found 3 brands that are copying my company, word for word. Of course, I want to get them taken down. And you're offering to do it in 72 hours. We can guarantee to beat your your current custom cup manufacturer's pricing and delivery time. Interested in seeing some examples. So this is a case of leading, like having a good offer in general, just like beating their pricing and delivery time and all that, and then also having a nice CTA where you're giving some examples of your work. So these are all great examples of cold offers. We're leading with the outcome that prospects actually want, not just what we're trying to get from them. So there's gonna be 3 types of cold offers that we like to use the most at our company. I mean, there's many types of offers you can run, but these are like the 3 main ones that we consistently run the most for our clients that have had the most success. First one being a sales asset. So this is something like a case study deck, a playbook, a white paper, a strategy document. This is where, let's say you generate a result for a company. Let's say, we recently helped this other company generate 1 million views on TikTok. Mind if I share a case study explaining how we did it and how it's relevant for relevant company? When you're dealing with cold traffic and people don't know who you are, this is a good way to build trust. Right. Because another example is let's say you have a really unique SaaS product. We had this one client, they sell glasses for roofers the glasses are kind of like the meta glasses that can record video of the roof, and you can use that as data that gets directly put into your CRM for these roofing deals. And that's a really unique solution. So we first will, explain the product, and then be like, hey, can we show you a demo of how it works? From there, it's a good way to, in terms of demo, I mean like a video, right? A video of what it looks like. So that's something that's good as well. Good way to build trust. Number 2 is a friend offer. So this is like an introductory service built specific for cold traffic. It can be free or at a significant discount. So this is an introductory service. This is a little bit different than like a free trial or sample, and I'll dive into why. But I mean, same sort of thing. You don't really have to think about it too deeply. But example is so like a free email campaign, free ad creative. So this is where you're performing your service just for free, like your typical service. Or you can have, just like a really simple sell. So like a $500 welcome flow build, or a 1-month trial at a cost, right? Or like a pilot program that you can run, where it's like selling at a good price, it gets validation of your product, and then they can upsell into your main service. And then, so for a free trial or sample, this is something you just give away completely for free. There's no strings attached. They reply yes, you give them the free value, and then it goes from there. This builds a lot of trust and rapport. So an example of this is like running a free cold email campaign for prospects. And what we can do is just, we send out emails. We say, hey, we'll run a free campaign for you. Are you interested? They say yes. We ask them for some info. We build campaigns for them, and then we just start sending them leads. And then they don't have to do anything. There's no strings attached at all. Or example, this one. So like, just sharing 5 contacts who are interested in your services. This is like the more like permissionless value proposition. So without the permission, we just give them value. Yeah. So we're so confident in getting results for you, willing to for free first, blah, blah. Now diving into infrastructure. So this is obviously the engine behind everything, right? You have the best R&D, the sharpest messaging, most refined ICP. But if your infrastructure isn't dialed, then none of it matters. And that's the truth. If you're landing spam, then everything you've done is pretty much meaningless. So at the base of every campaign you create, deliverability is just everything, right? Like you have to get this right, or else you're just going to be so frustrated. And nowadays in 2026, deliverability is incredibly difficult. Ever since like 2024, 2023, since Google and Outlook started implementing these new AI algorithms for the inboxes, deliverability has just become significantly more difficult. Back in like 2020, 2021, you could just send emails from your personal email if you wanted to, and you'd inbox most of the time. But nowadays, you really got to do everything right, or else you're just going to be struggling and very frustrated. So I'm going to walk you through the exact setup we have used for the 70+ B2B companies that we have worked with. So cold email infrastructure, what that's going to look like. as a base is going to be email sequencer. Well, so there's going to be 3 core components: sequencer, inboxes, and then domains, right? In terms of email sequencer, we use Email Bison. This is like the sort of premium sequencer tool. Of course, we use it because this is our full-time gig, so we're going to use the best of the best. Really, I'd only recommend it if you're sending more than 50,000 emails per month. The reason why is because their base pricing starts at like $500 a month, but you can use tools like SmartLead or Instantly that come around like $90 per month if you're going to send less than that. And if you know if sending cold emails isn't your job, then you don't have to use this. But Email Bison, from my experience, has been the best sequencer. Some key advantages: isolate IP, so you're not sharing an IP with any other users. Why that's important is because the IP that other people are, if you're in an IP pool with other senders, but these senders you're in the IP pool have a really bad reputation, then that's going to affect your reputation, which is going to hurt your deliverability. So you're fully isolated, and that's why they qualify each person that uses the tool. You can't just be some random guy. You actually do have to hop on a discovery call with them, ensure that you're not going to be spamming, you're not going to be hurting the warrant pool. So it dives in the warrant pool. It's a premium warrant pool. Again, they vet all the users, so there's not going to be any sort of like plagues entering the warrant pool in terms of for spammers who are using bad practices. So the warrant pool is really strong. API for everything, so it connects super well. Running campaigns from Claude Code to Email Bison is amazing. Their API is amazing. Sorry, pricing is by email accounts. It's every 1,000 emails you add to your sequencer. They increase the pricing by like $500, but most people will never get to 1,000 email inboxes. So unless if you're an agency, you don't have to worry about it too much. And they also have direct founder support. But a lot of other tools they do. If you're gonna do high volume cold email, a lot of the other tools do by leads, and that's actually really annoying if you're doing heavy scale. If you're doing millions of emails or millions of leads per month, it gets really pricey. And Email Bison at scale is cheaper than most tools from my experience, right? But if you're doing a lower volume operation, I recommend SmartLead. They're great just for our particular agency. Email Bison is more of a fit. Inboxes, so we use scaledmail.com. They are an inbox reseller, and they have email accounts directly through Microsoft and Google. The reason why you want to use a reseller instead of purchasing inboxes from Google and Microsoft is Google and Microsoft inboxes, if you're buying them directly from the companies themselves, they're pretty expensive, right? They're like $7. They're probably like $8 now. Now it's 2026 because of inflation. So $8 per inbox is very expensive at scale. Whereas using a reseller like Scaled Mail, instead of paying $8 per inbox, you can get inboxes for like $3 per inbox, and you're getting the same quality. And Scaled Mail, we've sent millions of emails through Scaled Mail. Their quality is assured. If you have any inbox issues, they swap out the inboxes for you. Their team is super responsive. They set up inboxes quickly, so you don't have to do the setup yourself at all either. So that's the nice thing about resellers as well, is they do the full inbox setup for you. They make sure all the DNS settings are set up right. They handle it for you. This ESP mix, I wouldn't say this is exactly what we're using nowadays, honestly. I don't recommend using SMTP at all anymore. Due to some recent updates with ESPs, SMTP has not been inboxing well. So I recommend staying away from it. But like if you're really tight on budget, you can use SMTP. The only reason why I have it here is because if you're doing really high volume, it can sort of dilute the cost a bit. But as of right now, like April 8th, 2026, Google has been our most consistent, best performer. So if you go all in on Google, that's completely fine. Like just 100% Google. Microsoft, so they offer Microsoft Azure inboxes. This isn't your typical Microsoft inbox. The setup is different. It's like 49 inboxes per domain, and then you send 2 to 3 emails per inbox. This like works. It's kind of finicky, honestly, as of recently. I know people who consistently get good results with Microsoft Azure, but I lean a lot more towards Google. If you were to like looking to diversify, I'd recommend doing 50-50, not this split, 50 Google, 50 Microsoft. And Scaled Mail has plans where you can get these 50-50 plans just through it. So I recommend using Scaled Mail. They've been the best. And for domains, we use Porkbun. I mean, I don't really need to dive too deep into this. They're reliable, they're cheap. When you buy your domains, you want to only use .com domains. Well, you don't have to only use them. You can use .co, you can use .info, .org. You don't have to use just .com, but .com is the best for longevity. When you're creating your domains, you don't want to use numbers, you don't want to use hyphens, and you can just create different variations of your main domain, right? So something you can do as well is add reserve infrastructure. So what you can do is, what I mean by this is, let's say you need 100 inboxes for sending 30,000 emails per month. If you want to ensure that when you eventually run into a deliverability issue, because it always happens, you can set up a reserve of inboxes for when that main batch burns. You have a backup, and you can, best practice is to have a 1-to-1. So if you have 100 inboxes, you have 100 inboxes in reserve as well. But if you don't have the budget for it, it's completely fine. You don't have to do this. It's kind of like a hyper optimized type of thing. And the more volume you do, like obviously the more expensive it gets to have a reserve, so you don't have to do a ton. But as an agency that offers cold emailing as a service, when accounts burn, and we know they will, even if we do everything right, we need replacements to replace them immediately to keep firing. It's non-negotiable, right? Because our revenue is based on us sending emails for our clients, so it's non-negotiable for us. So now diving into the deliverability protocol, this is incredibly important. Take notes on this, please. So many people mess this up. Probably the biggest technical mistake I see is just everything around deliverability. So many companies get this wrong, even in terms of the infrastructure. Like people use HubSpot as their email sequencer. They'll set up like @gmail.com domains or inboxes and buy domains from the sketchiest websites. But in terms of practices outside of infrastructure set up, it's so important. So many people skip this. So warm-up protocol, we keep it at 2 weeks, 15 days, whatever you call it. We start with 5 warm emails per day, increase by 1 per day until we reach 20 warm emails per inbox. If we're going to send 10 to 15 cold emails per day, we maintain the same sort of like sending time window, and then ensure at least 70% of open reply engagement is on. If you don't know what email warm-up is, it's essentially a practice where you connect your fresh email accounts to a server that has that automatically sends emails back and forth from other email accounts to build reputation. That's what warm-up is. And we want to just have this run before sending any cold emails, because what the ESPs will see is like, okay, these brand new email inboxes for the last 2 weeks have been sending emails and receiving replies consistently back. So this is really important to do to ensure, again, that the ESPs can have been shown that you have some reputation in terms of having conversations with other inboxes. And then what we want to do once the 15-day warm period is done is a ramp up period. So we don't want to just go from like 0 cold emails to 20 cold emails per day. We want to start with like 5 and then increase by 1 per day, and then kind of just do some throttle checks. Like let's say one day you increase volume and then you see reply rate just drop a lot, then cut back the volume sending a bit, because you don't want to push it too hard. Just take your time with it. So when it comes to Google, we're going to do like 10 to 20 emails per day. That's like our sweet spot's 15 cold emails per day is a good spot. And Microsoft Azure can be 2 per day. It's a different setup. So, but if you use Scaled Mail, they have a full guide in this. I recommend checking it out. In terms of settings for the campaigns in Email Bison, schedule is gonna be 8 to 5 p.m. EST on weekdays. Open tracking, we never track it. It hurts. Having that open tracking pixel hurts deliverability. Always want plain text. We don't want any sort of HTTP or HTML text in our emails that hurts deliverability. It can be flagged as a spam. We don't ever use unsubscribe links. What we'll do is we'll have like a random keyword, say like, hey, if you don't want to receive emails from me anymore, just reply back with a carrot and I'll take you off my list. And that kind of tricks the ESPs to where like instead of you're seeing a lot of like no's, having a unique keyword and is just better, right? Than having a no. And you can spin text that as well. Auto replies, we include them in the stats just to confirm that emails are inboxing. So like if you're getting a lot of out of office replies, then that means you're at least inboxing, right? Because if you're landing in spam, you wouldn't receive anything. And then follow-ups, we only do 1 follow-up per campaign with a 3-day delay. We prioritize new contacts. So just 1 follow-up or even no follow-up. A lot of people are kind of shocked by that. But the reason why we only do 1 follow-up is because after that first follow-up, the number of replies we receive from the number 3, number 4, number 5 emails drops off significantly. So if like, let's say for example, we have a 4 email sequence and 60% of replies come from the first email, that means only 25% of our volume is accounting for 60% of replies. So if that's the case, why not expand that? Why not make that that variable of 60% of replies are coming from 50% or 100% of the volume versus, having 50% of your volume in the 3 and 4 emails only account for, let's say, 10% of replies. It doesn't really make sense by the numbers. If you have a small TAM, then it's more acceptable to have a longer campaign. But really, in reality, it's better to just create a new campaign, maybe hit the same contacts again, versus just having a ton of follow-up. And also, beyond the first follow-up, people start getting annoyed. Like they're probably not going to respond. Like they're just going to get annoyed. And for some additional infrastructure in the stack, doing cold calling, ready mode is the dialer we use. Good for parallel dialing, doing high volume outbound via calling. We have SDRs that are doing $500 to $2,000 per day. I won't dive too deep in this. I mean, this is a video about cold email, but cold calling can run in tandem with cold email. It is a service we offer, and a lot of our clients like to have cold email with cold calling. LinkedIn automation, this is nice to have for running that parallel sequence. Or let's say you generate positive responses, you can have reach out to those positive responses on autopilot from campaigns. And then for workflow orchestration, I mean, I'm going to dive more into this in the list building section, but clay.com is it's kind of like the core tool that most people use. A lot of people are kind of shifting to Cloud Code recently because of how powerful that tool is and how cost effective it is, especially with Clay's new pricing. But Clay is still great. I still really like the tool. And yeah, I mean, you can do everything in it, like lead qualification, data enrichment, waterfall email finding, AI powered company analysis, routing leads to other outbound channels. It's a tool that pretty much sits in the center of your outbound OS and it can connect to everything. So great tool. You can connect your APIs. Like we have for the tools we pay for, we use them via API inside of Clay, and we get it's a lot cheaper than burning the credits that Clay uses. And then if you want to use NAN, we use NAN for like more advanced automation. So if we have an automation that processes a lot of data, so let's say for example inbox management, so reply scoring, all this stuff, we're processing a lot of replies per day, and Clay kind of struggles with processing a lot of data. NAN is really great for that. So I recommend it when you're doing a more advanced automation that you need less errors with. NAN isn't as it's a higher learning curve than Clay, but it's really powerful, and I really recommend it if you're going to do any workflows where you're dealing with a lot of data processing. A good rule of thumb is, validate a workflow inside Clay and then rebuild it out in NAN, or you could do it in Cloud Code now. I mean, you could do everything in Cloud Code now, but I'm keeping it simple for this video. So yeah, so diving into some email health monitoring and then RevOps, mostly RevOps stuff. Email Guard, so that's gonna be a great tool for testing inbox placement. They're probably the best. They were built by the same team that created Email Bison. They actually built Email Guard first before building Email Bison, which is why I really like Email Bison team, because they come from such an extensive deliverability background. They know what they're doing, especially when they built a sequencer. Outbound Sync. This is gonna be the tool that just syncs all the activity back into your CRM. It's specifically for HubSpot and Salesforce at the moment, but you can connect it to your Email Bison, HeyReach, Instantly, Smart Lead. It's just a tool that makes it really simple for pushing all the positive responses you get from your campaigns into your HubSpot and auto-populating all that data. It's instead of having to do it manually. And also tracking attribution from Outbound Sync as well, or from your campaigns, from cold email campaigns in HubSpot. Outbound Sync helps with that as well. Masterinbox.com is going to be your master inbox, obviously. What a master inbox is a inbox that centralizes all the replies from the hundreds or thousands of inboxes that you have. And it's great if you have, if you're getting a ton of replies. I recommend upgrading to this. Email Bison has a master inbox built in their sequencer, but if you're really looking for like that premier response experience and like kind of having like a reply management CRM, Master Inbox is great. They also have like some AI tools you can use in the tool to help reply to people faster. So great tool. And then one of the main tools that we'll be using for signal monitoring is going to be Trigify.io. Trigify is specific for monitoring engagement across social platforms. So they do it for LinkedIn, Reddit, Google search as well. They've been one of the best tools, and some of our best campaigns have been these Trigify campaigns, specifically for running campaigns where we scrape people who engage with our own content and then run outbound to them. They're some of the warmest prospects. And what you can do is you can have Trigify run a webhook on, let's say you're monitoring people who engage with your content, right? Have that go into a Clay table. You can qualify each of the people who engages with your content. And for the people who are qualified, you can send them an email, send them a LinkedIn message, call them, whatever you like to do. So you can track your own engagement. You can track your competitors' engagement, which is really strong as well. And then you can also track topics. So you can track topics around like outbound, sales, marketing, whatever it is. Whatever is something that's relevant on LinkedIn or Reddit, you can track a topic around and run an actual campaign around. If you're trying to do this around like a really niche topic, or you're doing this for an industry that's maybe not really on LinkedIn or Reddit, then it might not be as powerful. But if you're in an industry that is active on LinkedIn or Reddit, or if you have a big following, Trigify is super, super powerful, and I 1000% recommend running it. Now going to list building. So list building, this is going to be the fuel to your campaigns. Without leads, without a list, your campaign obviously can't send emails, right? And also when it comes to list quality, that's going to have a big impact on, the actual results from your campaign, how you're going to approach a campaign, and the profitability of your campaign. So when it comes to campaigns, bad fuel equals bad mileage. Bad lead lists is going to be bad campaign results, right? Your lists don't just determine who you're reaching out to. They also determine how you write your copy. So it's not just a matter of like having a good list in terms of like data quality. It's also like how segmented is your list? Like in terms of, are you just reaching out to a broad list of e-commerce brands, or are you going more segmented, like going after specifically beauty brands running TikTok Pixel with 20 plus employees, right? That's going to change how you approach your messaging. When you go more broad, the message can't be as specific and might not be as resonant. But when you go more specific, more segmented, you can write a more resonant message, which can make a very big impact on your campaigns and reply rate. So really, the more refined your list, the more refined your targeting can be. To dive into data sources, there's going to be 3 types of data sources that we're going to be mainly pulling out leads from. This first one is actually kind of like 2 separate data sources, but first one's going to be online directories and Google Maps. This is something where you're going for like niche data or local business data. Um, Local business data best is 1000% Google Maps. And using tools like Clay or Serper.dev, you can scrape this data reliably, or even Cloud Code. You can do this in Cloud Code. Um, and Google Maps data is great because so many local businesses don't have LinkedIn profiles. So using your typical database like Apollo or Zoom Info, you're just not going to find nearly as much data because these databases source their info or data from LinkedIn. And a lot like these, mom and pop shops, they don't have a LinkedIn profile, but they do have they most of them do have some sort of Google profile, which is why Google Maps is so powerful. You can really get a ton of data from it when you scrape it properly. When it comes to online directories, this is for finding very niche data sets. So an example of this is, let's say we're looking for, or we had a client, they wanted to target architects specifically, or architectural firms that were specifically associated with the American Institute of Architects, and that's called like the AIA. So what we did was we went to the AIA website and we found that they have like a directory of all the AIA certified companies. So from that, we were able to use a tool like Instant Data Scraper to scrape the entire website and then pull that data into Clay, enrich the companies, find domains, and then find contact data from those domains. And that's like a really good way to build like a very specific niche list. Another example of this is like government websites. Let's say you're scraping for some sort of regulation, or you're scraping for companies that have been certified in some sort of whatever certification. Going to these specific websites and finding directories within them is a really powerful way to build a very specific lead list that has some sort of unique data point behind it. And you can use tools like Instant Data Scraper. This tool is free. It's just a Chrome extension. It's pretty reliable. You can pretty much use it on almost any website. One thing to keep in mind though, if you're trying to scrape a website, the website does need to be in like a directory format. So it needs to be like in a list. Otherwise, it might not work using Instant Data Scraper. And you can also always search just Appify. Appify has so many different scrapers. They have a marketplace. You just search in like, all right, I want to find a scraper for a G2. Type in G2 scrapers and you're going to find a bunch of options, and then you can kind of test them out from there. Next one's going to be dedicated account databases. This is pretty simple. Just like the typical databases you have that you pay for, and they already have the data for you. They have filters for you. They make it easy. You just export the data and take it from there. A few main ones: Apollo. Obviously, this is like probably the most used and popular database in 2026. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. It's not necessarily the cheapest. We just have ways of scraping it for very cheap. So like you could, I won't recommend any right now, but you can just search up Apollo.io scraper, and instead of having to pay for like a full Apollo plan where you only get like 1,000 credits per month, with like nothing, you can use a scraper tool that can get you like 1,000 leads from Apollo for like $3 or $2 or whatever. And it's way cheaper than paying $99 for 1,000 leads. The tool is super easy to use. We still use it, and yeah, I mean, it gets the job done. Crunchbase, this is gonna be great for finding anything like regarding funding stage, anything around funding. Crunchbase will be good, or even news, things like that. Built with, this is for specifically tech stack stuff. So if you want to find companies that are using a specific tech stack, Built with is good. Apollo actually uses Built with for uncovering their tech stack data. So Apollo has pretty decent data on this if you want to just use that. Keep in mind too, like these tools are kind of expensive, to be honest, these databases. That's why I recommend just using Clay for a lot of this. Like Clay has, you can connect your APIs to Clay and pull data from there, or just use Clay credits itself. And it's typically cheaper than having a subscription with one of these. But these are just something to keep in mind. Store leads, e-commerce data, they're solid. They just have a bunch of e-commerce data. Clutch.co for like agencies. GetLATCA, it's like this is kind of a weird database, but they pretty much have like all the main SaaS companies. I think they have like 80,000 SaaS companies, so you can scrape GetLATCA for that. Shovels.ai, this is for like architectural firms and building companies, construction companies. That data is solid. If that's like a industry you're going really deep into, PitchBook for anything that's regarding like VC, private equity, M&A, investment banking. PitchBook is for that. This is a solid database. It's pretty expensive too, though. And then D7 and Lead Finder. This is for local data. If you don't want to figure out how to scrape Google Maps, it's not really like amazing, but you could use it. I recommend doing Google Maps though. And then the next type of data source that we're going to be pulling data from is going to be lookalike data. So that's going to be like AIArc, Ocean, Disco-like. These are going to be your go-to tools. The one I recommend is going to be AIArc. In terms of like pricing and what you get and quality, AIArc is probably the highest bang for your buck. Disco-like is probably the best out of all of them, but it gets kind of expensive at scale. Ocean is a pretty legacy lookalike tool. They're solid, but I think the other two are probably better. But essentially, what lookalike data is you have let's say you have a case study or a client that you want to find more of. You just get their website domain, you plug it into one of these tools, and then it's going to build a list of companies that are just like it, and it's typically pretty accurate. You can also use keywords for anything, and it'll find companies around this. Tools like Disco-like, they don't just use LinkedIn; they also use Google, which is like why they get that's why Disco-like is really good because you get a lot more coverage. But again, it gets kind of pricey, so just keep that in mind. But if you have the budget, definitely recommend using Disco-like if you're looking to build like really really strong lists. Now diving into data enrichment and verification. So this is once we have the companies. So with these databases, this is where we're finding the list of companies, right? From there, we want to actually find the decision makers and qualify the data and all that. So it's gonna be this is the general flow of what it's gonna look like. First, we want to qualify the companies, then we find contacts, verify the contacts, and then loading to campaigns, obviously. But before we run enrichment, we want to qualify the companies because even with all these databases, um, most of the data that you pull is not always going to be fully accurate. So what we can do inside of Clay is we can use their Clayagent feature to analyze the company website, just confirm that they're in the target industry, and then just check it against your ICP criteria. And that's why it's really important in the ICP modeling section to like really nail that down because you can use that in your prompting for Clayagent when you're running the qualification prompts for the companies. Which the more refined you get on your ICP criteria, the more accurate your lead lists are going to be. It's going to save you money on enrichment costs because you're not enriching unqualified companies. You're going to save your email volume on sending to unqualified prospects. So that's why getting really honed in on your ICP criteria is very important because it's going to affect your campaigns in a pretty significant way. We just use GPT-4o Mini for qualification. It's good. It's good enough, and it's one of the cheapest tools because doing this at scale can get expensive. And in terms of enrichment waterfall, it always changes, but like the one that we use is ICPs, then Prospio, then Lead Magic. And then we also use Lead Magic for email verification again. We use ICPs on the front end because it's the cheapest and it's really solid. It's cheap, but it's a really solid for finding emails. Prospio and Lead Magic are both phenomenal. So whatever ICPs can't find, we have Prospio and Lead Magic search for it. And then we also have Lead Magic verify all the emails that are found from this waterfall. Now diving into campaign execution. So this is where everything comes together. This is where we have all the work we did for the R&D. We got our thesis. We have our ICP fully outlined. We have our offer outlined. We have infrastructure set up. We have our list. We have everything set up. So now this is where we execute, and this is where a lot of teams kind of they have a lot of data, but they don't actually know how to put it together. So this is where many people make mistakes and most teams fail. And I'm going to go into some concepts and kind of break this down to science. But one of the things with outbound is there's no definitive rules. You can break the rules to it, but this is all gathered from the context I've gathered from sending tens of millions of emails. And sometimes you might have a different experience from what I say has worked or doesn't work. But I've had a lot of data backed up behind these concepts, and I've kind of been able to put this into a formula. So I'm going to cover this, and I think this is a pretty important concept. But again, this is all from my experience of working with hundreds of companies, sending millions of emails, and seeing the feedback from that. So if I were to break down campaign creation into a formula, it would look like this. It's going to be your playbook plus your context plus your offer plus your market plus deliverability is going to equal what your campaign results are. So your campaign results are going to be a result of these 5 things. And each of these factors, these variables, holds a different weight within your campaign results. And I've kind of like created a scoring field here to get a gauge of like how your campaigns would actually perform if you were to give yourself a realistic assessment of how you were, how you're going to be approaching your campaigns, like what do you have in place, right? And this scoring is it's pretty strict, right? So let me explain each of these first before I dive into that. So what your playbook is, so this is going to be a pretty much a campaign strategy that you've either proven before or haven't. So if you're running a brand new playbook that hasn't ever been proven before, you've never seen it work before, it's not coming from like maybe you learned it from someone like me or someone that you know who's run outbound before and found success. If you're just starting from complete scratch, then you probably don't have a very good playbook, because simply it's something that's completely hasn't been tested before, right? I mean, albeit you could be running a playbook that no one's tested before and it works amazing, but typically, let's say in the context you're just starting out, if you're not using a playbook that you've seen has worked, or you're testing something that is new, or kind of goes against what you've seen has worked, then it's probably not going to be a strong playbook. But if you have a playbook, like for example, for companies who are targeting like architectural firms, we have a playbook for that we've seen that consistently works. And if I get a client that is targeting that same market, I have a playbook that I can implement for them that I know is probably going to work for them, right? Or same thing with like AI agent offers, or even like e-commerce offers. We have playbooks in place that have been proven and can be repeated for other companies. So when we have a strong playbook, that's when we have a high score. But if we don't have anything that's been proven before, or it goes against what's been proven, then it's probably a weak playbook. Context. So this is gonna be everything you did in your R&D phase. Like how much context did you actually use, and gather and implement for your overall campaign creation process? Like how much criteria did you have in your ICP when it came to your list building, or how much how deep did you dive into like the pain points or value proposition when it came to your messaging, right? Um, how much did you like? How much research did you do on your offer positioning and craft a really strong offer for your messaging? Like things like this is where context is super important. Offer. So this is going to be obviously what I've discussed about before. Something that's as low risk, as low effort, as outcome based, urgent, and desirable as possible for your market. That's how you can kind of score your offer. Obviously, the higher risk, the higher effort, the worse, right? Market. So this is going to be just things around saturation, sophistication. This is something you can't really control, so you just have to give a pretty honest assessment about that. Same with offer too. Like offer, if you're selling something like SEO, you can't really like it's something that's naturally always going to be kind of like high effort and not super desirable for your client. So like no matter how you spin it, it's never going to be like a 10 out of 10 offer. So things with like offer and market, they can kind of be out of your control sometimes. And you just have to give yourself an honest assessment about that. But yeah, like so for market, if you're targeting e-commerce, it's more saturated industry than most. If you're selling, cybersecurity, it's more like difficult offer than most, right? Or if you're targeting an industry like some sort of really niche local businesses, the sophistication and saturation is going to be much lower, which is going to give you a higher score in terms of like how strong your market is, right? So the higher the score, the less saturated the market is. The lower the score, the more saturated, right? And then deliverability. So really, this is pretty binary, to be honest. But I mean, you can fall somewhere in between, like the 0 to 20 score. But really, it's like, if you're landing in spam consistently, then you're probably going to be pushing around a 0. If you have everything set up in place, if you're using like scaled mail for your inboxes, if you're using Evil Bison, if you've done your 2 weeks warm up, if you've done your ramp up, and you're consistently getting over like a 2% reply rate, then you have good deliverability. You can say it's like a 20, right? So just making sure everything's optimized in terms of infrastructure and sending practices is how you're going to be able to score that. And as you can see, deliverability has a massive impact on the score over everything else. Because as I've said, like if you don't have deliverability, then you're just going to get 0 results, right? So let's say your deliverability is 0, but everything else is, a max score. You have 10, 20, 30. Your campaigns would still be the bottom percentile, right? You'd still be getting one lead every 3,000 plus emails, probably like 10,000 plus. if you're always landing in spam. So without deliverability, you have no chance, right? So let's say for like if we run an example here, and let me cover this first actually. So when it comes to scoring, as you can see, there's a really big gap in the bottom percentiles versus the top, and it's kind of curves pretty exponentially. So as I said, like if you don't have deliverability in place, or if you just don't have any of this in place and you have deliverability, like you're gonna have a low your campaigns are probably gonna suck, right? Just being honest. But let's say, for example, to land in this bracket where you're getting one lead every 3,000 to 1,500 contacts, which is like, that's not really ideal. That's still not really a great campaign. You got perfect deliverability, your playbook, your context in place. But if your offer and market are not really the best, if it's like a 2 out of 10, then you're going to land in this bracket, right? So you could do everything right. But if you're in a really difficult market and your offer is not the best, like if you're doing cybersecurity, selling to IT professionals, you're probably going to land in this bracket if you do everything right. If you don't do everything right, you're going to definitely land in this bracket. Then if you as you go higher up, kind of like a mid-tier campaign, or even this is still kind of below average, being in this bracket of the 1,500 to 750 contact to lead ratio. And what this means, by the way, is every 1,500 people you reach out to, you get one lead, one interested response. Um, so within the scoring, let's say, for example, you have perfect deliverability, playbook context in place, and you have like a 5 out of 10 offer in a 5 out of 10 market, then you're going to land here. So if you're selling, let's say, I always go back to this, but like e-commerce, or no, let's do a different example. Let's say we're selling AI agents to agencies, right? It's kind of like a 5 out of 10 offer. AI agents, to like it's starting to get kind of saturated, and you're selling to agencies, which is like a 5 out of 10 market. It's somewhat saturated and sophisticated, but they always seem to respond, and it's a really big market. Then you're probably going to land in this range where you have a decent offer, decent market. You'll probably get one lead every 1,500 to 750 contacts. Then as we go up, this is where having a good offer or a good market is necessary. Um, to be in this top bracket here is like you're gonna pretty much have to have everything completely dialed. A great offer, great market, great context, great playbook, great deliverability. There's no room for error if you want to be pushing these numbers. But an average campaign where, like, let's say you have a decent offer, a solid market, and you do everything correct, you'll be landing in this range where you're getting one lead every 300 to 750 contacts. So this is what I've seen is rung pretty true across all of our clients. And when you run your campaigns, if you can reference this, you'll be able to get a good gauge of like how your campaigns will perform. It's surprisingly pretty accurate. And this really showcases how kind of brutal cold email is, because it's like only the top percentile is getting good results. Anything below that is not cutting it very, very much. So yeah, the goal is to be in this range, but for some offers, like the max, the top might be this. And that's just kind of how it is, Before you're running outbound, I mean, it's good to assess this and see if it's even worth it for you. But for most companies, it's worth it, though. All right, now diving into the psychology and the principles of cold email messaging. So this is probably the section that most people are the most excited to see. So this is incredibly important. I mean, everything I've covered so far is incredibly important, but this is this is super important. So many people get messaging wrong, and I'm going to try to break this down in as simple terms as possible. So first, before we dive into principles, I want you to understand the psychology of all this, right? So cold email is probably the rawest way to get direct market feedback from your ICP, right? You're sending the message, and it's fully anonymous, and they can say whatever they want to you. I've had people say horrible things to me responding to these emails, and they're going to be honest, right? They don't really care about how you feel or anything. They're going to be honest. You're going to get very raw feedback, right? And when it comes to outbound, we're dealing with the primitive brain when it comes to the prospects we reach out to. It's a very quick thing, very quick process. It's like they read your email, they have 5 seconds to read it. We're dealing with the subconscious brain here. And with the subconscious brain, we can actually find predictability and patterns within that, which is actually a good thing. So, at a subconscious level, humans are 99% the same. So, just putting yourself in the shoes of the prospect, which is something that you should do, is, let's say you run a successful e-commerce store and you receive 50 cold emails per day from marketing agencies every day. You see the same 75 to 150 word email giving the life story about how your agency is somewhat different from the rest. At the end of a long-winded story, they ask for 30 minutes of your time over a Zoom meeting that you had zero intention of ever attending. And just imagine this for years on end in your inbox every day. So when a prospect opens an email and it looks like the same 100 emails they get in their inbox, no matter how great your service is, you could be a phenomenal agency. No matter how like well written and passionate your email is, their subconscious brain is going to immediately classify you as the rest of the spam. They're just going to think you're just another agency, like another crap agency. Even though if you're great, if you're doing the same thing as everyone else, you're just going to be classified as spam. And if we really want to get their attention, we have to be a pattern disrupt. We have to be different. Like the moment they see our email, there has to be something different about it. There has to be something truly unique, and there has to be some real value to it. And the definition of pattern disrupt: recognizing unwanted pattern, disrupting it, and leading someone to a desired behavior. So what this is in the terms of outbound is the unwanted pattern is going to be classified as spam. The disrupt is our well-written, unique cold email, and then the desired behavior is going to be a meeting booked. And thinking in the mind of the prospect, if you want to, stand out, be a well-written email, a unique cold email, be a thing from the mind of them. And they really only care about 5 things. First being, how will you make more money enter my bank account? Have you successfully helped others just like me before? Did this person do any research on our company? So like, does it like, are you sending an email to a tech firm and then accidentally saying, hey, I saw your e-commerce brand was, needs XYZ thing, right? Like you can't make mistakes on this. Show them that you know who you're reaching out to. Are you a real person or a scammer? So like when they search you up, are you real? Which is kind of like a slightly separate thing, but and then is this a waste of my time? So you have to address each of these things in your email and do it as few words as possible, because really the process, like the best rule of thumb when it comes to cold email is your prospect should be able to read the full email within like 5 seconds. And when I say read, I mean like skim the email and understand the general concept of it. Again, there is some exceptions to the rule. I've seen people send like massive paragraphs and book a ton of meetings from it, but those are very unique cases. But if you're sending to a cold market that has no context in you, you want the email to be as short as possible and as skimmable as possible, right? So here's an example of a TikTok organic offer that we're sending to clothing brands, and does everything I mentioned within 31 words. Real quick name: create a deck outlining the TikTok organic strategy we used to help Nike generate 10 million views in 30 days. May I share with you? So what's happening here with this email is, number one, it's obviously a quick email done in 31 words. You can read this. I read that in probably 3 seconds. When it comes to how we're going to make more money into their bank account, we're signaling status. We're signaling a end result that results in more revenue, right? Generating a ton of views for a brand. How have you successfully done this for others? Nike mentioned the case study here. We're also offering a case study that they can see real proof of. Did this person research my company? So a way we can signal that is, number one, we're offering an asset to them that is valuable to their specific role and also their company in general. So we're talking about a clothing brand or just like an apparel brand in general, like Nike. If we're reaching out to other apparel brands, this is like, we know when we're sending this email, this is something that's relevant to them. So that's kind of how we display that we know who we're reaching out to. A real person, a scammer. I mean, this is kind of like you. The way we can signal this in this email in particular is we're offering to share the case study with them, so they can see like the real proof of it. And then, is this wasting my time? I mean, if we can show them that we did this result and this is something that they're looking for, it's definitely not a waste of time, right? So signaling these 5 different things in a very quick email, simple and to the point. And yeah, it's a strong email. We ran this email before and it's done phenomenal. So pointer for you there. So now that we covered the psychology of cold email, let's dive into the principles. So these are pretty much rules or principles that we use anytime we write a cold email. And this is something that we like to feed to Claude and we have Claude help us with our email script writing. So these are like guardrails that our AI uses when it writes messaging for us. And I'm going to cover this all now. So in terms of scripts, should be at least under 75 words. Like going beyond 75 words, 75 words is even quite a lot. Again, if you have an email where every word in it has a purpose and it ends up being 75 words long, then that's fine. But really, we want to be in this sort of range of being like 25 to 45 words at most. I think like that 45 word range is solid, where you can pretty much get everything you need to say out, and have a full email that's short and easy to read. And the further you go down like the offer tier list, so like for tier one, tier two offers, this is when I say a tier one, tier two offer, that means like tier one's like your worst offer, tier two is like the second worst offer. I'm just gonna say like these are like the bad offers. I know it's kind of like flip flopped, um, but the worse your offer is, the shorter your scripts typically need to be, right? Because your selling site's already difficult to sell. Adding more friction by making the email longer and harder to read is only going to make your results worse. Um, Really, for like the worst offers, you want to make them sub 45 words every time, ideally, right? You want to get to the point. As I mentioned, you want it to be under 5 seconds. Like, they should be able to skim the entire email, understand what you're offering, or you're going to lose them. Second principle is going to be always having a strong front end offer, or introductory offer for cold traffic. So like pretty much we always run some sort of front end offer. It's pretty rare where we're selling like the full service right in the a first cold email. Really, it's like we're starting with something pretty introductory. And again, with like the worst the offer is, you the almost more certain you need a front end offer for. So like the more complex it is, like you're selling something like consulting, or just some really high ticket package, having something on the front end that's you can get your foot in the door with first is really important. But if you have a really strong offer, then leading with just like a sales ask or a case study is good enough. Um, or you can just go for a call, but still it helps, right? Even if you have a really good offer, amplifying it further by using some sort of front offer or introductory offer is always powerful. For the next principle, casual, easy to read messaging. So, like you want to make this seem like you're sending an internal email to a coworker. That's the typical vibe you go for, and that can look different across industries, right? If you're sending emails like as a guy who works at a PE firm, the emails that you're sending might be more formal, right? Even if you're sending to a coworker. So kind of have the context and like the general understanding of the lingo, depending on the industry you're going after, and then copy that sort of that tonality when it comes into your messaging. You don't want to be over. You don't want to be robotic. You don't want to make it seem like you're using AI at all. That's always an immediate turn off. Um, you want to avoid these M dashes. Of course, as you can see here, I kind of used AI a bit for this document, but all this is like information from my brain. I just had it kind of like help me format this, but I did add a bunch of M dashes. So I recommend not adding a bunch of M dashes to your emails, because that makes it look like AI. So be careful of that. Next one's gonna be soft over hard CTAs. So what a hard CTA is going to be like, hey, do you have 15 minutes for a meeting? So going for the meeting immediately. That's like the hard CTA. Or like going for the sale at me, like, hey, do you want to buy this product? Right. Um, but the thing is, like, when someone asks you for a meeting with minimal context, you barely know the person, you typically aren't really excited, right? So for a soft CTA, we're making the ask much lower, much less friction, so we can just spark the conversation. The goal with cold emails is just to spark the conversation first, and then lead into the meeting and then the eventual sale. Um, so soft CTAs are great. Uh, Value CTAs, so like offering a sales asset, like leading with your front end offer in the CTA is really good. Value CTAs have really been the best, but like even just using a soft CTA, just saying like, interested in more information, are you interested in learning more? Open to discussion. A value CTA is gonna be like interested in seeing a case study, interested in learning more about our offer, things like that, right? So like really pitching calls and is dead in most markets. Next is gonna be a principle for subject lines. So it's crazy how many people get subject lines wrong. It's surprising me because it's so simple, and a lot of people overthink it too. Really, just keep it simple. Like you don't your subject line is not that important. The goal isn't to have a perfect subject line. It's the goal is to just not make a bad subject line, where you're doing something like, hey, you're like 10% off, click here now, using spam triggers saying like, get $100,000 now or whatever. Like keeping it as unfishy as possible and just simple. So examples of this is, and the general framework I use is 1 to 3 words long. Um, just say something that's relevant to the email. So like TikTok shop. If you're selling a TikTok shop offer, just say TikTok shop or influencer or email marketing or quick. You can use quick questions still. It works. I kind of tend to stay away from it, but you can use it. It's fine. Um, just make it look like again like the subject line you'd say to a coworker, right? Don't overthink it, but also don't put emojis and use a bunch of numbers and put some guarantee in the subject line. That's how you get flagged as spam. Next principle is going to be one follow per campaign, and we want to maximize for new contacts. So I covered this a bit earlier, but really we don't want to have a billion follow up. We want to just keep it. We want to maximize new contacts. Keep it one follow up, especially when it comes to like these more difficult offers. The more you spam follow up, just the less like the more people are going to be marking you as spam. But also, if you're not generating that many responses per contact, then you want to be maximizing new contacts. Um, and yeah, we just do one follow up 3 day delay. Kind of already covered that earlier. And then this is a really important concept too, but having a really strong B2B funnel and founder funnel. So when someone receives an email from you, before they book a meeting with you, they're always going to look you up. Like no sane person is just going to like not look you up at all and book a meeting with you. So making sure that like you have a website at least, make sure it's clean, make sure you have a clean LinkedIn profile, um, having YouTube channels. I mean, these things are like you don't have to have them, but it really helps. But at minimum, having a clean website with case studies and have a full just a clean website with everything that they need to know, and then a LinkedIn profile that shows you actually exist is very crucial. Um, because if you don't have that, then it's gonna be hard to trust you, right? They might just think you're not even a real person because there's so many like AI fake SDRs now that are sending emails. And again, I mean, this is kind of common sense, but the worse your offer is, the more you're going to have to focus on these things, on working on everything that you possibly can control. Now, diving into email script frameworks. So I know a lot of you are going to like this. I'm going to cover 6 main frameworks. I got 6 here. Yeah, 6. And I've tested these across pretty much every major B2B industry, and they've all worked pretty well, right? Like these have all worked. I wouldn't be sharing them this video if they didn't work. And I'm sharing the frameworks. I'm not sharing exact scripts. Um, so again, these are frameworks. You can, you know, alter them as you like or use them as is and adjust accordingly. So, and you can also have AI, take this and write emails using these frameworks too. Helps a lot. So the first one's gonna be lead magnet plus a case study. So this is offering like some sort of sales asset off a result that you generated. So this is how it reads. First name, create a lead magnet for company name covering the mechanism or strategy we implemented for client name to generate result within the last time frame, CTA. So example of this, we created a case study for Nike covering how we generated X million views for blah blah. Oh yeah, I wrote that. I did that completely wrong, but you get the general idea. Offer a lead magnet for a company name, for the company you're reaching out to, covering what you guys do for and who you did it for, and mention the result. Um, this could even be like if you have a SaaS product, it's like, hey, we created this tool that does XYZ thing, and we helped implement it for a company and generate this result within a time frame. Interested in seeing a demo of it. So this can work for services, SaaS products, anything. And this is really great for if you have really strong social proof, like with a well-known name in the industry, then this is what I recommend using. One-liner free offer. So this is just a one-liner email. This is like if you have a really good front-end offer, this email does so well. So how it reads: first name, interested in free work front-end offer for company name, and then you add social proof in the PS. So the email is literally just is one line pretty much, right? You reach out to a relevant persona at a relevant company. You offer them something that is a strong front-end offer for something that they typically want for company name specifically, right? And then In the PS, you want to add some point of social proof showing like, we did this for another company recently and it worked out well for them. That's pretty much just like, giving validation to like what you're offering isn't just a waste of time for the free work, even if it's free work. So if you have a compelling friend offer, this is one of the best performing emails I've ever sent. Uh, it's worked insanely well, and it's crazy because it's so simple. Next is going to be a direct offer and guarantee. So this is like if you have a really solid offer and you have a guarantee that you want to use, then this is a good email for that or a good framework. First name, interested in generating dream result with mechanism for company name in the next time frame. Our mechanism guarantees result or risk reversal. So it's like interested in like converting more after hour calls with our AI caller agent for company name in the next 30 days. Our mechanism guarantees a 50% boost in conversions on on or 50% more jobs booked, or we refund the entire thing, something like that, right? So you can use this for many different cases. um, and yeah, this works well for like good offers with strong guarantees. Next, pain point plus solution. So how this reads: first name, relevant question around pain point, so asking something around the pain point. Our solution offers how to fix that problem and achieve a result, interest-based CTA, and then you got social proof in the PS. So kind of using another example, it's like first name, are you getting a lot of after-hour calls that you can't attend to? Our AI agent can handle all calls 24/7 to achieve, booking more jobs even while you're not at the phone. Interested in seeing a demo of this? PS, we did this for another roofing company and increased their job bookings after hours by 100%. Good example of an email that email would work, and we've ran something like that before. So next is going to be relevant touch point plus. Oh well, but yeah, this is good for like if you have a pain point that is relevant and maybe something that you can even get from like a unique data point. Um, that's really strong. So the next one is going to be relevant touch point plus observed issue. So an example of this, well, first I'll read it. First name, relevant touch point, notice, relevant pain point, interested in quick solution pain point. So example, first name, signed up to your welcome flow, or sorry, signed up to your newsletter. Notice that you don't have a welcome flow in place. Interested in a quick welcome flow build for your newsletter. I have some ideas that would be great for this. That's an example of an email that could work. And yeah, this is good for offers where like you can have AI or you can scrape some sort of specific weakness, and then as I said, missing welcome flows, unoptimized checkout pages, or competitors outranking them. So if this is something like if you can find a data point that could indicate a potential pain point, this is something that like this is a solid email you could use. And for the final framework, unique market insight. So first name, quick question around relevant touch point, unique market insight, CTA around offering to implement the insight. So a good example of using this email is we did this for a client. So we're reaching out to a market where their assets or we had a list of companies where their assets were at risk for their retirement plans for their employees. So like billions of dollars in assets were at risk because the provider that these companies were using for asset management was acquired, and there was a potential of like losing their assets. So essentially what we said was like first name, um, did you see the recent acquisition of asset management company that you were using? Um, they've made a call recently, or there's been news about it recently that if you don't switch to their new company, that you might lose all of your assets with this company. Interested in seeing how our company can help you make this transition. That was like the pretty much the email that we were doing, but we were going off like some sort of relevant news. So that's like a good example of this. So anything around like some sort of relevant touch point where you have like a unique market insight to pair with it. This is a really solid email. Now that we covered the frameworks, here are some like just general messaging angles that you can kind of like piece together within your emails. And really like doing anything outside of this is typically fluff. So here are some like the main angles you can leverage within your email. So first one's going to be a pain point, just mentioning a pain point for the persona and tie it to your offer. It's a pretty common one. Mentioning a case study, that's always helpful. It's not always helpful, but like if you have a really strong case study, it can definitely help. A no-brainer offer, I mean, that's of course this is essential. A no-brainer offer is like the one thing you pretty much have to have in all your emails. Again, the rules you can. There's always exceptions to the rules, but I would say like 90% of emails you need a good offer, right? You need to be offering something, or else what's the point of sending an email? A unique data point call out, so like mentioning some sort, like scraping some sort of unique data around the prospect's business and then tying that into your offer. And next being like a unique industry insight, which is kind of like this example here. So when you create your emails, like piecing these together. So let's say you have an email where you start with a pain point, next line is a case study, next line is a no-brainer offer. That's a solid email. Or if you start with a no-brainer offer, mention a pain point of what happens if you don't take the offer, that's a strong email too. Or let's say you lead with a unique data point call out, mention a pain point around it, and then leave with no-brainer offer. That's really strong. Or if you have a unique industry insight, you then dive into a case study on how you help someone around this unique industry insight, leaves the offer, good email. So these are some examples of like how you can piece these all together. And, typically having these in the email is always going to make your email better. So now diving into campaign management and optimization. So this is going to be pretty much everything you need to know when it comes to once you launch your campaigns, what to look out for, how to manage and like continue to generate leads from campaigns, and how to actually optimize off of results that you've been generating. Um, and how to determine like if your campaigns are performing poorly, what does good look like. So I'm going to dive into all that now. So key metrics to track. These are going to be pretty much the 4 key metrics that are just absolutely most important. Everything outside of this, like open rate, any of that stuff, is not really relevant. This is the most important stuff. So number 1 being reply rate. So this is mostly important to deliverability. Again, we don't track open rate because having that open rate tracking pixel, it hurts deliverability. So just tracking reply rate is a great metric for that. Anything below a 0.5% reply rate typically means you have a deliverability issue. And let's say you're running campaigns, you consistently have like a 3% reply rate, and then the next day you're just down to like 0.5% or 0%. You're definitely 1000% running into some sort of deliverability issue, whether that be like your list is wrong, or your email accounts are compromised, or the messaging you're sending is getting flagged as spam, or like you ran into messaging fatigue, so like the emails are just not even sending out. These are all the best way to find this is through reply rate. Like your reply rate is going to be the truest indicator of deliverability in most cases. The next thing is pause reply rate. So seeing like how well from the response you're getting, how well your offer is actually performing based off of that. This is kind of independent from deliverability. Bounce rate. Diving back into this. Also, like analyzing the intent behind the positive replies is important too. So, not every positive reply is created equal. If someone wants a meeting, that's going to be more valuable than someone saying like, "Hey, I just want more information." Um, so, analyzing the intent, and you can do that with Cloud Code if you connect it to Email Bison. You can pull all the positive responses and then run an analysis on the general intent you're getting, and then score it from there, and see how you can potentially improve it. That's also important to track. Next will be bounce rate. So this is mostly around your list. So like if your list quality is low, then you'll have a high bounce rate because you'll be sending emails to a lot of unvalidated email addresses. But as long as you're under 3%, you should be fine. So if you're validating your emails, you should be under 3%. Um, if it starts going above like 10%, that's when you're at risk for domain reputation problems. And then this is like the performance metric that we prioritize when it comes to results for our clients is the contact to lead ratio. So this is like these are the same numbers I used for um, the scoring tiers I did for the campaigns. So really just assessing like how many people do we need to reach out to generate a lead, and understanding that number is going to be how you're going to be able to scale campaigns and really break down outbound into like a science and a math and determine ROI from there. So, if you let's say every 300 contacts, you generate a lead. and you send 100,000 emails, and that's what's rang true for the most part. Um, and every lead you generate, 25% of them convert into a booked meeting, and then from there, let's say you convert, 20% of booked meetings. From there, you can do like a revenue projection of how much money you're going to make from your outbound system based on this number to start with, right? So you need to understand this when you're running your campaigns, and this is going to be like the number to optimize for, right? Because you can always optimize for reply rate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your contact to lead ratio will improve. It's a mix of these two, so very important for optimization. What this is going to look like. So A/B testing, when it comes to A/B testing, after you, my rule of thumb is like after you send like 500 emails of a variation, you have a pretty decent gauge of what to evaluate. I'd say maybe 500 to 2,000 emails. You're gonna have a pretty good idea of how your script is performing, and then from there, depending, like let's say you test 4 scripts, you sent 500 emails to each of them. You can get a gauge of what responses are looking like and which scripts at scale are going to perform better. I recommend like, even 2,000 emails is probably like ideal, but if you don't have a big list, then 500 is decent. Um, you can analyze CTA performance, so like determining between like testing out soft and hard CTAs and seeing which ones are performing. Because sometimes maybe you book more calls from hard CTAs. Like you could be getting more responses from soft CTAs, but when you look at the numbers, maybe you're booking more calls from hard CTAs. Test offer variations, so like same list, different offers. So when you're doing an A/B test for scripts, really the highest leverage thing you can test is offer, um, and that's really how you get to message market fit as soon as possible. Yeah, the mindset's just create a thesis, fire shots, collect data, iterate, and then fire again, and just keep that loop going, right? Um, keep test your batch, cut all the losers, double down the winners, and just do that over and over again over time. And then when it comes to volume management, of course we want to push as much volume as possible, but we want to scale incrementally. Like let's say you have a TAM that is you could send 5 million emails per month to. Um, Starting out with 5 million emails per month without getting any sort of validation at the lower ranks probably doesn't make sense, and it's also a massive risk, right? So you want to find out validation at like a lower volume and then scale from there. Um, and yeah, once you scale, I mean, data quality is naturally going to kind of dwindle a bit because you need more leads, depending on how high volume. I mean, this is like an insane volume, but yeah, you really want to keep it as high as possible. But if you're scaling to like a million emails per month, then it's not always gonna be perfect. But you do want to scale. Like if you have capacity and you have TAM for volume, the goal is to like reach your full TAM at least every quarter. That's in my opinion from what I've seen what's worked best for clients. So here's a quick checklist that you can use to audit your outbound campaigns. So first, obviously, audit your existing campaign numbers. Each campaign needs to be assigned a benchmark. Are we hitting it? So using the formula, I won't scroll back to it. Like using that formula I mentioned, like create a base KPI, or if you have been running outbound campaigns for a while, get your average and then make that the base KPI, and just make sure like, okay, are you hitting it? And set goals for increasing that KPI higher each month, and see like, all right, are we getting closer to it? Are we falling behind? And then from there you can assess like, all right, do we test new messaging? Do we test new list rate or new list builds? Do we need to scrap our infrastructure and get new infrastructure if we see reply rates going down? So just assign benchmarks for like reply rate, positive reply rate, and then average contact to lead ratio, and then come with KPIs on how you can improve it as well over time. On a bounce rates, so anything over 3%, you want to address it, right? Is it a list quality issue or is it an email count issue? Audit your list, audit your email counts, and then just kind of get to the root of the issue from there. Underperforming scripts. So after you send enough emails, go into each campaign and look at the script variations, and you'll be surprised, because sometimes like we'll forget to check the variations on a campaign, and we'll see that like we have a campaign that's performing well, but it's like one email out of the 4 variants for testing is like generating all the leads. So it's like if we simply removing the other 3 emails and going all in on that one email, 3x our campaign results overnight. So always, and like checking out your script variations, seeing how they're performing, and if you see ones that are clearly underperforming, removing them, and then just doubling down the winners is how you're gonna. It's a quick way to just literally double your results overnight. Email management, so always checking for broken domains. Run deliverability tests. You want to do this like weekly if you can. I used to do it monthly. I mean, as an agency, we do this weekly, but yeah. So if you ever see any accounts that are showing signs of like reputation decay, or you see that it's like consistently getting a low reply rate on those email accounts, then or a high bounce rate, you just want to remove them and replace them as soon as possible. Trying to like revive them, it's not worth your time. We never do it. We always just remove and replace. It's the best solution to just remove and replace. Analyze sequence performance. So which sequences are getting the most replies, and then kind of get a gauge of like, all right, is it the messaging that's working the best, or is the targeting what's working really well? Is the offer that we're doing for this campaign really what's resonating the most? Dive pretty deep into it and see why that's working, and then see how you can do it across the rest of your campaigns. And then reviewing pause campaigns. So this is something that happens, like this is kind of specific to the agency, because if we have any campaigns that like go over a certain bounce rate, then the campaigns are immediately paused. So if we see we have any pause campaigns, we just review what's going on. If it's high bounce rate, analyze why, clean list, and then do what we need to do. So that covers campaign management optimization. Now we have campaigns firing, we're getting leads. What do we do once we actually generate the leads? How do we actually convert leads into closed deals? And a massive portion of this that so many people overlook. I think I've said that line multiple times in this video, but a lot of people overlook a lot of things when it comes to cold email. But speed to lead. So I actually don't see many people talking about this. What to do? I mean, you'll see gurus talk about how to generate leads, like how to get positive responses, but very few people actually talk about what to do once you generate positive responses. And it's kind of surprising because, I mean, positive responses are great, but if you're not booking meetings, then, what's the point? It's pointless, right? So when it comes to speed of lead, we want to respond within 5 minutes. If you respond after 20 minutes, from what we've seen, the meeting conversion rate drops by 50 to 80%. So it's a significant drop off, even just after 20 minutes. And I see some teams responding the next day, right? Or a few days later, or just responding like once a week at the end of the week. And you're not going to book any meetings that way. Like you could book meetings, but if you want to maximize meeting books, you want to respond within 5 minutes. This is a non-negotiable KPI that we set with our partners that work with us in their sales teams, because it's in their sales team's best interest to respond to these leads and book meetings, as that's how they get paid. So we make this like a non-negotiable KPI, and we set up systems in place for all of this. So we set up agents that help notify the salespeople once a response comes in, and also like creating reply temps and all that. So I'm gonna be diving into all that, but this is for sure the highest leverage thing that your reps can be focusing on. It's higher leverage than cold calls, because the thing is you're dealing with warm leads. So like responding to these people immediately over email, and also calling them. So running warm calls. So like, let's say you respond over email, you could also cold call them as well, and do that within that 5-minute time frame. And it's a lot higher leverage than manual outreach. So the system we use for notifying reps once we generate responses is going to be, we use NAN, and we sync it with Email Bison. So Email Bison API to NAN workflow we have, it scores reply intent. So determining like whether a reply is an interested response, or they need more info, or they're out of office. And then once the reply has been scored, it pushes it to a Slack channel where the SDR, whoever sales rep, gets notified with full context of the conversation. So it'll show the full reply, it'll show the lead name, it'll show their email address, and we also can enrich for their phone number too. So we can send them the phone number so they can make the warm call as well. And this all takes like 10 to 30 seconds with our system in place. So I'm going to cover some reply templates that we unanimously use across every client, all industries. These are just templates you can use. And if you're doing reply management, you shouldn't be manually typing out every reply. That's an absolute mistake. You should have templates in place. So here are the 5 main templates that we use that cover most responses. Because really there's like 5 main responses we get. There's gonna be like interested, send more info, let's book a call, what's the cost, and then send this let me refer someone, right? So I'm gonna dive into this. So for I'm interested, Just be like, hey, first name, thanks for your interest. Here's some more context. If you'd like to implement X for company, available on day and date, let me know what's for you. Simple. We always want to give a specific date and time. I avoid using Calendly links because the thing is, when you send links, people click on the link, they'll be like, oh, I'll book in a meeting later, and then they completely forget. So just making it as easy as possible for them to say like, hey, I'm available on Tuesday at 2 p.m. And then you can book in for them. That removes that friction of them having to book in themselves. Next, we send more info. So this is like they're interested, but they want more information. Same sort of thing. Hey, first name, no problem. So essentially, we do in-depth breakdown of offer. For some context, here's value. So we always want to share value in this reply too. And this is important if you're doing like some sort of sales asset, of course. If you're interested in learning more, available on day and date to discuss further, let me know, and we'll go from there. So again, always mentioning a specific time and date. But yeah, in this, we're kind of taking a more like laid back frame and just giving them more information. Simple. Let's book a call. Let's book a call. Pretty self-explanatory. Just send them a time and date and make it happen, right? I don't need to dive into that any further. Wrong person, reach out to whoever else. What I do is what we do is, hey, first name. Oh, this is the email that we send to the new contact. So let's say, hey, I'm the wrong person. Reach out to our marketing director. Here's their email. And what we want to do we want to email that person. So we want to create like a CC thread to that new person and send them this email. And essentially all we're doing is, hey, first name, first contact told me to reach out to you regarding X. Just a quick intro, info, and then you can use like the same email body from the initial email you sent to the other person, and then CTA. Right. Next, we need cost. So for cost, this template has always worked super well for cost. Because when someone asks for cost, they're kind of interested, but they're also like a little skeptical. So we understand that frame, and this is what we do. Hey, first name, pricing varies, but we typically do pricing model. So we give them like a model, but we don't give them like the exact price. Can't give you specific numbers since it depends on customer needs, which is typically true, right? We can speak for 7 to 9 minutes about this briefly if you wouldn't be opposed to it. This line works so well. Like just say, hey, we'll talk for a few minutes about it, and if you're not opposed to it, if you're open to it, I'll send an invite. If not, no worries. So like super laid back. You're completely fine if they're not open to talking, but I've seen this kind of like reels back in more skeptical people in pretty well. So it's a really solid template. So you can use all these and tailor them to whatever you're selling, right? Now diving into the pre-call workflow and how we optimize show rate. Another very important thing, and if you don't have a pre-call workflow in place, your show rate is going to be so bad. Like it'll probably be like 20, 30%. Because with cold outbound, right? If we're booking them in, like we're reaching out to them, they're not scheduling it in themselves. There's a very high chance like they're not going to remember the meeting as well as they would if they were to book in a meeting themselves, like if they were to come inbound. So making sure that you have all these reminders in place is essential for having a good show rate for your campaigns. And typical like a good show rate with cold outbound is gonna be like 70-80%. You're probably gonna getting to 100, like 90 to 100% is pretty difficult with cold outbound, unless if you have like an SDR that calls them all that stuff. But just being realistic, that's what you could probably expect if you do all this in place. So here's the flow that we use. Once someone books in, they will immediately receive a confirmation email, and within this email, they're going to receive a 60-minute or a 60-second video explaining exactly what to expect in the call. Also introducing yourself, so like giving them a face to be ready for. That really helps, like making them more comfortable. And then also a link to a longer video sales letter or some sort of educational content to get them more educated on exactly what you're selling, so they can come to the call prepared. And in this email, you want to really like emphasize the importance of watching these videos, right? Then we send a follow-up before, or 24 hours before, 4 hours before, 1 hour before, and then 10 minutes before. That's the cadence. And in these follow-ups, we want to like remind them to go watch these videos because a lot of people forget. So we want to keep reminding them to check out these videos, right? And we follow up enough to where if they're going to cancel, they cancel typically like a few hours before. So yeah, this has been the case that's been working well for us. And we typically don't want everyone to book out. We don't want to book out beyond 3 days. Like we ideally want to book them next day or the day after. Um, Booking them like a week or two out is it's too late, and they're gonna forget the meeting. Like the show rate on those is always way lower. What you can do as well is you can send a connection request through HeyReach. So like when people book into your Calendly, you can connect your Calendly API to Clay, have them push to HeyReach, and enrich for the LinkedIn profile and send a connection request. And then if they accept and you post content, they can see your content and you can build some more warmth there. And then if you have their phone number, you can even call them before the meeting attendance. And yeah, as I said, don't book more than 2 days out, really. Like you want to get this done as fast as possible. Now for post meeting and nurture, we always want to record our meetings. So Fireflies is good. We use a tool also called Sybill. They're great as well. Transcripts, all the call notes can get pushed into HubSpot automatically. So that'll give you full context for any follow-up. And you can also have like AI use the context it gathers from the calls as well to help you write follow-up. When it comes to proposals, we like to use PandaDoc. So it's not, I don't need to dive too much into this, but like PandaDoc, you can use it, connects the contract and the invoice in one, and you can set up your full proposal in there, right? But once they onboard and close, like you want to get them in the Slack channel immediately and get going as fast as possible, strike while the iron's hot. Nurturing at scale. So for people who who go ghost once they have the call with you, you can add them to your newsletter. Your unsubscribe rate might increase on these people, but some of them might stay, and it's kind of worth it. And it doesn't hurt. You can do it. You can add them to the newsletter. So obviously you need to be posting on your newsletter, but it's good. It's a good thing to have, and just kind of like builds you can nurture them over time and over years in the newsletter if you need to. And then you can also run re-engagement campaigns for these people. So like, let's say you have a really good lead that you lost out on or has gone ghost. What you could do is like follow up with them a few months later and like give like a free month of service or some sort of like free one-time project. Something that is like super, super valuable that you really only offer to like a top tier prospect. That's a good flow to run. And then AI inbox management. So this is what I was talking about with like the email bison NAN workflow. So having this is essential and you need it. And there you have it. That's the full outbound go-to-market playbook that we implement for all of our clients at Pipeline Tech. We've done this for 70 plus companies. Again, we've generated tens of thousands of leads, millions in pipeline value for our clients. With this exact playbook I have outlined here, everything from R&D to infrastructure to messaging, everything. We've done this for our clients. It's proven. And if you follow everything I covered in this video today, I can almost guarantee you that you will start to book more meetings from cold email by just doing this. You have all the information, it's just a matter of implementation. So at this point, you have two options. Option one, you take everything I covered in this video, you implement it yourself. You'll get results for sure, and you'll do great. It might just take a while, and there might be, some trial and error, but it will work. And if you put in the work in, you'll make it happen. And option two is you let us build the entire system for you. We'll handle everything from R&D to infrastructure to messaging to targeting to ICP definition to inbox management to lead routing to CRM enrichment. Everything that is needed for success with cold email outbound, we'll handle it for you. And if that sounds interesting, click the link in the description below to book a call with me. On that call, it's going to be a brief call. I'm going to get to know your business a bit more and see if a system like this can make sense for you and if we're the right partner for your business. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this valuable. I post content like this regularly, so if you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.